Hello from Munich. I'm Irma, International Affairs Correspondent for Harbinger magazine. We're at the 62nd Munich Security Conference, taking place from the 13th to 15th of February, at what many describe as a moment of exceptional global urgency. The international security landscape is marked by overlapping crises: Russia's war against Ukraine, tensions between the United States and Europe, instability in the Middle East, rising nuclear risks, cyber threats, and the rapid expansion of artificial intelligence. In this context, Munich once again becomes a central platform for global dialogue. This year, more than 1,000 participants from over 115 countries are attending, including around 60 heads of state and government. European leaders are present in large numbers alongside the biggest US congressional delegation in the conference's history. Among the key figures here are Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. But beyond high-level meetings, this year's conference reflects a deeper ideological shift. The newly released Munich Security Report 2026, titled Under Destruction, argues that the global order is under pressure from political forces that seek to dismantle institutions rather than reform them. It highlights growing doubts about the durability of the liberal international order and raises questions about the future of US leadership. For Europe, this debate is particularly urgent. The report suggests the continent must rethink its dependence on American security guarantees and show greater political resolve in defending democratic institutions. The war in Ukraine also shapes this year's agenda in new ways. For the first time, a dedicated Ukraine House has opened alongside the main conference, highlighting Ukraine's defense industry and resilience. In the coming days, discussions will follow on the future of transatlantic relations, Europe's strategic autonomy, continued support for Ukraine, nuclear deterrence, cybersecurity, and AI, and ultimately on whether the rules-based international order can withstand mounting political pressure. We will follow these debates closely and report on what they mean not only for policymakers, but for the future we are all about to inherit. Before we delve into day one's highlights, let's briefly look at how the Munich security works from the perspective of journalists and other participants. Before the conference officially begins, both participants and media representatives collect their accreditation badges, applications for which are submitted months in advance. Without this badge, there is no access to the venue. The detailed schedule is typically released late the night before or early in the morning, as happened this year. The schedule outlines the agenda where all the different sessions, speakers, and side events take place throughout the conference. Security is extremely tight and filming is carefully regulated. There are 3 levels of camera access. Media areas include the media center, the main press conference hall, the designated filming outside of the Hotel Bayisharov, the press pooling area. These spaces do not require additional security clearance beyond accreditation. Restricted press zones such as interview areas and briefing rooms, access requires an extra security check. Highly restricted areas inside the Bayisharov recording inside the main conference building requires special clearance, and journalists must be accompanied by an official escort at all times. In short, while the conference is public-facing, access is tightly structured. Day one at the Munich Security Conference felt less like routine diplomacy and more like a warning. French President Emmanuel Macron and Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz openly questioned the direction of the transatlantic alliance under Donald Trump. Macron called for a stronger, more independent Europe, urging it to become a true geopolitical power in security as well as economics. Without naming Trump, he rejected US criticism and pushed back against portrayals of Europe as weak or divided.
I believe that Europe is inherently strong and can be made even stronger yet. And this is now.
Mertz went further, saying that US-led international order based on rules is being eroded. He revealed talks with France about a potential European nuclear deterrent while stressing that cooperation with Washington still matters in an era of great power rivalry. The tension did not start this year. At last year's conference, US Vice President J.D. Vance shocked attendees by criticizing Europe's migration policies and calling on leaders to end the isolation of far-right parties across the continent. Ukraine remains central, with Macron insisting no peace without Europeans. The message from day one was clear. Europe wants more strength and autonomy, but not a break with the United States.
You know, the most important people in Europe are talking about where European security is going, where the relationship with the US between Europe is going. What are we doing to actually arm ourselves in response to the threats we're facing from Russia and other places around the world?
We really don't know what comes next. That's like it's partly scary.
Day 2 at the Munich Security Conference felt like a reality check and a reminder that history is watching. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio opened the day by admitting the West has made mistakes but insisted the United States still wants to move forward with Europe, not away from it. The message, the transatlantic partnership, isn't over. It's being renegotiated in real time.
We do not want our allies to be weak, because that makes us weaker. We want allies who can defend themselves so that no adversary will ever be tempted to test our collective strength.
Ukraine remained the emotional and political center of the room. President Volodymyr Zelensky warned against what he called the illusion of ending the war by dividing Ukraine, comparing it directly to the failed attempt to save Europe by sacrificing Czechoslovakia before the Second World War.
It's Ukrainians who are holding the European front. Behind our people stand an independent Poland and the free Baltic states. There can be a sovereign Moldova and a Romania without dictatorship. And even one victor can think about how to grow his belly, not how to grow his army to stop Russian tanks from returning to the streets of Budapest.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi stepped in with the defense of multilateralism, warning that without institutions like the UN, the world slides back to a system where the powerful dictate terms to the weak. Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer delivered a clear line: Britain's security and Europe's security are inseparable. More spending, more coordination, more delivery, and less hesitation.
We do not seek conflict. Our objective is lasting peace.
If day 1 was about Europe finding its voice, day 2 was about whether the global order can still hold together.
The speech of Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, after last year's speech by J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the US, that made a very big impression on Europe. We're still talking about it this year. So it was very interesting to hear what the Secretary of State had to say this year.
The final half day of the Munich Security Conference ended with firm messages on transatlantic unity and Russia. European Commission Vice President Kaja Kallas rejected claims of European decline. She said that, contrary to what some say, woke decadent Europe is not facing civilization erasure. She added that many countries still want to join our club, and not just fellow Europeans, pointing to Canada. On Russia, Kallas called it no superpower and warned that Moscow's ambitions go beyond Ukraine. She argued that the real risk is Russia gaining more in negotiations than it has achieved on the battlefield. Former NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg stressed that allies must defend core values such as territorial sovereignty, referencing recent tensions over Greenland, while welcoming ongoing talks aimed at resolving the issue.
Right now, what we're seeing is aggression from Russia. We're not sure what direction the US wants to take. We're seeing massive military buildups in China. So the real question is there a liberal world order where which is rules-based, where small countries like Estonia can have a say, where our freedoms can be guaranteed. Is such a model possible? Is there a way to exercise power to keep the state of affairs of the world where we solve matters through discussion rather than conflict? Is this still possible? What would this future model look like if the post-Cold War world order is now collapsing?
In this conference, young voices are quite limited. It was about conversation among established leaders.
I think it's really for the youth to say themselves if they feel like they are given enough opportunity to give input to these leaders who are actually making decisions, who are coming onto these stages, or talking about all the decisions we need to make. I mean, I think it's a question for you rather than to me. I mean, is your voice being heard? I don't know. You have to say.
I think that the young are being ignored a lot because our opinions matter, because we are a part of the population, but the young people, they don't have the right to vote or or give statements about political statements or whatever. That's why I think that the people in the conference right now should also let the young people, like the 18, 19, 20-year-olds speak and let them give their statement.
They always say, yeah, we hear the young and we try to address them, but I think behind closed doors it's often still the same voices that rule the world.
As the conference closed, the message from Munich was clear, but measured. Unity, values and strategic patience remain at the centre of Europe's response to a shifting global order. Reporting from Munich for Harbingers magazine, Irma Mecele.